Welcome, everybody, to Huddle Up with Matias Bueno, episode 32. Today's guest is two-time Grey Cup champion of the Montreal Alouettes, Ben Cahoon. Ben, thanks so much for joining us in today's episode. It's super glad to have you on, and it's always a pleasure to be able to talk with you.
Hey, my pleasure, Matias. That's great to be with you.
So, Ben, we were talking a little bit earlier today about some of the crazy games that happened in the CFL, and having been on the Alouettes during what was an absolutely amazing run for them through most of your career. They had so many crazy games that you guys were involved in that went your way and didn't go your way. So let's talk a little bit about some of the most memorable games that you played in that maybe don't stick out in the minds of fans, but stick out in your mind in terms of some of the key games that really started to bring your team together. So the first time you guys played in the Grey Cup or made a Grey Cup run during your career was in 2000. Talk about how you guys got to that point. Were you guys a big favorite to get into the Grey Cup, or were you a bit of a middle of the pack team because you guys hadn't really made a big name for yourselves at that point?
Well, at that point, I was still pretty young on this team, and it was a team that kind of the core started in Baltimore, and then the team moved up into Montreal. So a bunch of those guys had been together for two or 3 years, been close in a Grey Cup game before, and it took us. I joined the team in '98. We didn't make it the Grey Cup in '98 or '99, so it took us a couple years for my first Grey Cup appearance, and then I think we had a good record that first game in 2000. Um, BC Lions, we were playing them at McMahon Stadium, and I think they were sub 500. We were definitely the favorite in that game, and we went out and they just rolled us. They ran the ball on us. They had two running backs, Millington and Drummond, that just they had, I don't know, 175 yards each. It seems like we had a chance. We scored with very little time on the clock, and a 2-point conversion would have put it into overtime, I think, or maybe one. I put it in overtime, I think, and we're unsuccessful.
In that game, I remember seeing highlights of it, and it almost reminded me a little bit of the 2001 Grey Cup the next year. A similar thing happened with the Bombers being 14-4, the franchise best, playing against the 8-10 Calgary Stampeders, and the Stamps were up most of the game, had a punt block touchdown. And so how did you guys rebound from being in a situation where you suffered such a gut wrenching loss? Because as a heavy favorite, especially in the CFL, everyone knows that no lead is safe and that records don't matter, and everything that's on paper goes out the window. So how did you guys recollect as a group from that, from 2000 to finally get over the hump in 2002?
Well, it is gut wrenching, and it'll cause a lot of soul searching. But what it does, it motivates you in the off season. You never want to feel that again. So it galvanizes the team, and it motivates the team to have a great productive off season and bounce back. Um, we didn't make the Grey Cup the following year, but and it probably the biggest impetus was a coaching change. I think Don Matthews came onto the scene. He was a proven winner and gave us the confidence and kind of the moxie that we needed to get back there again. And the very first year he came back as the head coach, we made it to the Grey Cup and won.
And you guys played into an additional chapter of the rivalry with Edmonton. Montreal and Edmonton having met in the Grey Cup before, I think 10 times in CFL history, something crazy like that. I don't know if two teams have ever played each other in the Grey Cup as many times as Edmonton and Montreal. And how how did that rivalry change during the time that you guys were playing? Because it was definitely different than the Warren Moon days and when Wally Buono was a player back in the 70s when the Owls played the Eskimos 5 times in the Grey Cup in a span of 6 years. What was that? What were those games like as your career started to get on? Because you were still a pretty young guy in the league at the time.
Right. I think Edmonton, the Eskimos would prefer to play the Alouettes in a Grey Cup game at any year because they usually got our goat. And it seems like we were the favorites most of those games, and they beat us, a few times. It's just really inexcusable. But good. Anything can happen in a Grey Cup game, as you know. And Edmonton came to play a few times, and got us when we weren't quite ready and we weren't on top of our game.
In the 2002 and 2003 Grey Cup, people will remember the big win you guys had in 02, playing in Edmonton and beating them on their home turf. And then 03, they got you guys back. But the big one that sticks out for most CFL fans is the one in 2005, and that took place at BC Place in Vancouver. The crazy, I think it was double overtime or something like that. And talk a bit about how that game went for you guys in terms of from your personal perspective versus what you guys were thinking throughout the entirety of that game, because it was so back and forth and up and down, and the 3rd and 4 Edmonton risked and the big catches that you guys made, especially yourself. Like, that game was so crazy. Like, because obviously no one likes to lose, but how do you reflect on that game now, knowing how crazy it was, looking back?
I'm just laughing because you remember things about these games that I don't even remember, and you're not looking at your notes. I've never been kind of a remember details of games guy. They all kind of blur. I've just never been that way, and I know different people have different minds and different recollections. But I was surprised I could come up with the names of Drummond and Millington talking about that previous game. So you're challenging me, and I'm chuckling at the same time because I can't believe the trivia So I do know what I remember about the BC Grey Cup is I think Pamela Anderson was the Grey Cup parade chairman of the Grey Cup parade or something. That was interesting. The Black Eyed Peas were the halftime show, so that was fun. And it was just a crazy game again that went back and forth. We should have beat that game, but Ricky Ray and the Edmonton offense just could not be stopped, and they answered every time we got anything on the board. I think I remember that down the stretch, we had a ball batted that came back into Anthony's hands, and then he threw it again. So we got a costly penalty on one of those, just a fluke, only in the CFL type play. But again, heartbreaking losses. That the hardest part about a lot of those losses was that we didn't play our best football or even close to our best football. And it doesn't matter. All that matters is who shows up to play that day. And we deserve the losses, obviously, and credit goes to the Eskimos for the times that they beat us. But it does eat away at you when you know you had more football in you.
And obviously, when you play in the Grey Cup so many times and don't win, like no one likes losing. Period. End of story. And people often don't remember second place and all those cliche quotes, but you guys seem to have a knack to get to that game better than almost any other team during that era. Between 2000 and 2010, you guys made it to the Grey Cup in 2000, 02, 03, 05, 08, 09, 2010. So that's more than I think Calgary made the Grey Cup in this decade. And so you guys must have had something going right. And how did things change when Mark Trestman first came onto the scene? Because at that point, you guys had only won the 2002 Grey Cup, and you guys had lost the 2000, 2003, 2005, and 2008. So what changed when he finally came to the Alouettes organization?
Well, we did have a lot going right, as you state. We made it to the game, almost regularly, and that's tough to do. And we had some dominant teams, with really good records, and just kind of created a reputation of not playing well in the big game, which is sad. Trestman came in, and he was kind of a disciplinarian, and he was an offensive-minded coach, and really just gave us belief that we could move the football and score points. And Anthony Calvillo really responded to Trestman's coaching, and they worked really well together. Anthony had always been kind of a preparedness. The key to his success was just being prepared and knowing the playbook, knowing what the defenses were trying to do, and reading defenses. And he really flourished under Mark Trestman's system. And that's what It's hard to narrow it down and say what did Tressman do, but he was just a fantastic football coach that galvanized the whole team and got us all aligned, trying to be unselfish, putting team first, and playing, complementary football where special teams was just as important as offense or defense.
And Mark Trestman, I remember the first vivid memories I have of watching CFL football was when you guys were starting to really turn it on. I never knew about any of the Grey Cup losses that you had suffered, except for the 2008 one against Calgary. That was the ultimate defensive battle for the ages. But the 2009 and 10 Grey Cups were the first ones that I was exposed to. And Trestman had experience and had his hand in the NFL a little bit up to that point in time. And he, from even having spoken with Dwayne Ford on a previous episode, talking about how well respected Trestman was in the league, but how much respect he gave to the league back and didn't treat it like it was a step down from any other division when it came to coaching. And he was a very meticulous coach when it came to, like you mentioned, just the word disciplinarian. He was very meticulous when it came to, okay, today's practice is going to be 200 minutes and 15 seconds, and we're going to run this number of plays and this amount of time, and these are our sessions, boom, 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 boom. So how did you respond to the way he galvanized the troops? Because it sounds like he's a disciplinarian guy, but as a player, were you a person that loved a disciplinarian figure, or were you a person that liked a coach that was more easygoing and more of a player's coach who was very friendly, like kind of guy?
That's tough. I loved Mark Trestman, and I really just immediate respect. He was just a guy that treated us all like professionals, but he demanded a lot out of us, and he was a no nonsense guy. But so I loved his system. I loved his approach. I also loved the approach of Don Matthews, who was just a fly by the seat of your pants guy and really gave the veterans a lot of leeway. And he was laid back, and he always just got a kick out of just telling, hey, we're just going to go helmets today, no pads, just giving a team a break. He loved that. And he loved to be the man and have all the players cheer for him when he, let us out of practice early or whatnot. And Don Matthews said, Cahoon, I'm going to add years to your career with his approach. And he did, because he was pretty chill, and he knew that he was going to try to keep a veteran team fresh. Trestman did not have that, laid back approach. He was very meticulous is the best word. It's a better word than disciplinarian, frankly. The word that you used was more appropriate. But he was meticulous. He was demanding. But he acknowledged that the freshest team on game day was going to win, the team with the freshest legs. So he backed it off, in time for us to recover and be ready. But he also just, he had a humility about him that was just really unique. This guy's been a coordinator in the NFL for 20 years, comes up to the CFL, and he's constantly telling us, that he's trying to learn the game still and trying to figure out the nuances. And he had a humble approach that was really admirable and contagious and helpful, I think. Allowed us to relate to him and not have this domineering, presence.
And especially for coaches that have had their hands in the circuit of the NFL, especially someone like him who had been in it for so long, it can seem like a bit of a daunting task as a player to live up to their expectations, or be worried maybe that they're going to say, oh, well, in the NFL, I did this, in the NFL, I did that, or Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, this, Joe Montana, that. And you're kind of sitting back like, wow, like this guy was in the top of the top. And now he's coming up to humble Canada to teach us a thing or two. But the way in which he approached the game, from the sounds of it, was that he carried that mindset of being a continuous student of the game and never relinquishing his openness to learning, because he still knew that there was so much to learn. And from one of the things that Dwayne Ford and I talked about was John Hufnagel and his impact on the Canadian game with the 5 receiver sets that they would run with the Stampeders through the 90s and into the 2000s, and how, if you watch a lot of old CFL tape before you got into the league, there wasn't much of that. there was a lot of two back sets, a lot of I formation. And now you'll almost never see I formation is pretty much like goal line now. Like it's something that is very, very seldomly used. And those changes in the game have a great impact on spreading out the offense, or empty gun, 6 receivers. That really, those must be the moments that really make your eyes light up with joy, because when you know that it's going to be a passing situation, that anything can happen, and you can open yourself up to making crazy one-hand catches and being the Larry Fitzgerald of the CFL and never dropping the ball whenever AC fires it your way. Because you look at someone like John Hufnagel, who also had experience in the NFL, and now this is, a little bit of trivia for yourself, and I didn't know this, or maybe you did, but John Hufnagel, he worked with the New England Patriots and worked with Tom Brady when he was in the beginning of his career. I believe he was the quarterback coach of the Patriots when Tom Brady was in the year they won the second Super Bowl, and he worked with the Jacksonville Jaguars with Mark Brunell in one of his best seasons that he had statistically. And coming from a CFL fan, seeing how much impact he had in the NFL, especially with amazing players, it blew me away now looking back on what he's done in the CFL, working with Calgary, and how he was a quarterback in the 80s with Winnipeg and played with some other teams. But what were some of those moments that you really enjoyed when Mark Trestman, or maybe some of those things that Trestman implemented that he learned that really gave you guys the opportunity to open up the offense even more? Because you guys were such a powerful force with yourself, Jamal Richardson, SJ Green, Anthony Calvillo, Avon Coburn, like the list goes on. And I'm sure that you could talk for hours about all the amazing guys that you played around on offense. So what were some of those things that he did that really made you guys an even more explosive team on offense?
He just had an offense that he tailored to the talent. And, when he came up, he'd worked with Jerry Rice and, a ton of talented teams in his time in the NFL. And with the Raiders, but he just, when he first came up, I looked at some of his stats in the Raiders, and he had his running backs that had a ton of catches and a ton of rushes. And my first concern was, he's going to feed the running backs, and just do little dump off passes to the running backs like crazy. And he did that, but mostly he had a progression type offense that was wide open, and the quarterback would go through his progressions and never hesitate to, dump it off and let the running back do the hard work. And we had great running backs with Avon Coburn, who could block, but also tote the rock, and also had great hands out of the backfield for some of those years. So you think he just had weapons. He had a great quarterback, obviously, in Anthony, one of the best. He had good receivers with Jamel, SJ Green, Terry Watkins, and stud running backs. So he had a lot of weapons, and somehow he got us to buy into his system, which was to not worry about the rock, just play football as if you are all interconnected, and your success is dependent on your neighbor's success. And what he was great at is he preached that over and over, and we bought into it. And he created, team football instead of guys worrying about their stats. And that was the key. And he did that not just on offense, but defense and special teams as well.
And watching the guys that you had on offense and seeing Calvillo seemed to play with a bit of a cool, calm, collected mind and rapport. And you could really see the way that he managed himself in games. He never looked phased, despite maybe turning the ball over if something bad happened on offense. And I think that was one of the best things about watching him as a fan, was that he was never a guy that was too high or too low. He was very even keeled with his play at all times. And you could see that he seems to also have a very even keeled demeanor off the field. And he was not really loud and shouting, but he wasn't like quiet and meek. And some of the throws that he delivered to you, especially, just have blown me away. And the iconic one, and forgive me for not knowing what game this is in, but the amazing one-handed catch that you made, I think it was in the early 2000s, maybe it was in the playoffs, I can't remember. Like your whole body laid out, like every single inch you had to stretch for that ball. What do you remember which game that was in, or what year?
You said one-handed?
Yeah. It was, oh, I think it was like, or it was
It was a
diving.
Grey Cup. It was a Grey Cup in Saskatchewan. I'm sure we were playing Edmonton, but I don't know what year it was.
Oh, 2003.
One of
Or if
those.
it was that game was 2003 then.
Yeah. So yeah, beggars can't be choosers. You just go thankful when he throws it. Don't get a pick where it goes, and just try to make a play. But um, yeah, it was a pleasure playing with Anthony. He was pretty even keel, like you said, but he was a competitor. Um, he was just cerebral, and he didn't want to allow his emotions to interfere with his thinking and processing out there. And the quarterback position is ridiculously hard to play. Very few people understand how many details they have to process in a millisecond. And Anthony, took his preparedness to heart. He was in every day before anybody else and watching film, and gave the whole team a bunch of confidence when you knew that he'd spent a dozen hours, preparing for this opponent, and that he was going to know what they were trying to do before the ball was even snapped.
Was Calvi, I correct me if I'm wrong, but Calvillo was on the Alouettes when you were a rookie, right? Like when you first got to the team, he was there.
We came on the team the same year.
Okay.
So we ended up being roommates, sort of, for a few years. He's a great friend. We had an annual golf trip to southern Utah, Vegas area that he used to come in for a lot of years. And anytime I'm up in Montreal or he's down in the States, we get together. And my whole career, I played with Anthony, so he was my guy for 13 years. And then obviously he played a few more years than I did, but yeah, he's the best and a great friend.
Who's better at golf?
That's a tough one. That's your toughest question of the day. Um, if the answer, hypothetically, if the answer was Anthony, I would never admit it. But you'll have to ask him. Yeah, I would say depends on the day, but my game sucks right now, frankly. So, but he's a coach. So his game likely sucks as well. So we'll have to have a rematch. It's been a few years, so it's anybody's game, really.
I think those are some of the most fun things about football is when you get to hang out with guys outside of the game, and when you're on the practice field or even when you retire, and especially when you've had so much success as you guys did together, your entire career being brought on, because he was playing with Vegas before and was all over the place, and then once he got to the Alouettes, then you guys really made a name for yourselves as one of the strongest cores, like as you can compare it to many other successful teams that had tons of longevity, whether it's the San Antonio Spurs and NBA, like when Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, or any other team. You guys had it, whatever it was, whether it's some Grey Cup losses, some Grey Cup wins, but you guys were very consistent, and I think that's one of the hardest things to do in the CFL. And as you can see, I like how you mentioned the part about how hard it is to play quarterback, because what fans in the CFL who are my generation are starting to remember is, oh yeah, the Alouettes are a team that actually have a pretty good history in recent years, because after Anthony left, things what turned into a revolving door at quarterback, and it was really difficult to find the guy, and Vernon Adams succeeding has been very good for Alouettes fans and for the league. But that's why you can never take it for granted. And I think with how much success you guys had and the number of high win seasons and Grey Cup appearances and wins, that's not afforded to just anybody, and not for any amount of time ever. Like even just making it to the Grey Cup once is hard.
Look at the Patriots without Tom Brady. I mean, professional football is a quarterback-driven profession, and you got to have a guy that can sling it. And the teams that have great quarterbacks have success, almost 100% of the time. But you do have to surround a quarterback and protect him. And thankfully, we had a great offensive line for many of those years, all of those years. Um, and Jim Pop did a good job kind of surrounding him with some talent at running back and receiver. So, um, but he's the best without a doubt. And I was just fortunate that the stars aligned and we were able to play a bunch of years together.
So since retirement, have you ever gone back to watch games, or do you still follow the league or keep up with it on television, or what? Or how do you like enjoy the CFL after your playing days?
I definitely follow the league from a distance. I watch whatever games I can find on ESPN. If I'm ever up in Canada, I always tune in, and I make a point to try to take, several trips up north each year with business. So that's fun. Um, I went to an Alouette Calgary game and did radio, did color commentary with Rick Moffitt and CJAD, and that was a total disaster, but it was fun. It was hilarious, um, and terrifying at the same time. But so I definitely keep track of the Alouettes and the league from a distance, and follow the newspaper reports and the websites, and but probably not as detailed as you.
It's it's always an interesting position to be in when you're a retired player looking at what your team has done in the time since, because for some players there can be a bit of maybe regret or wishing that your team would have done XYZ instead of what happened when you were there. And I know that can obviously be tough, but from a position like for someone like yourself, the Owls have been to the playoffs, I think, a few times since you've retired only, and that was like 10 years ago. So that also is a different position of, oh, I wish they're a bit better. So how have you, or how did you handle retirement even when it came? Were you someone that was looking forward to it, or was it something that you were not sure about? I mean, obviously you guys won the Great Cup in 2010, so like it must have been Peyton Manning riding off into the sunset and tipping your hat kind of moment. But how did you enjoy that moment in your career?
Well, I had decided between 2009 and 2010 that 2010 was going to be my final season, and it was just a matter of my body was breaking down. So I did not approach it with excitement, although winning back-to-back Grey Cups to end your career is absolutely magical. So I have no regrets. I knew my body could not handle another season. It reminds me almost daily that I made the right decision. Um, and and I just am fortunate to be able to look back on a career with a ton of great friends and associates, and just lifelong relationships, and just positive memories of the city of Montreal and the fans all over Canada. Frankly, when I'm in the prairies and in Alberta, you know, people come up to me, not regularly, but people come up to me and thank me for some good memories, and that means a lot, and I have nothing but the same.
And for those who are watching out there who might be a bit younger or maybe aren't as big fans of the CFL, unless their team has done the Great Cup, there's a particular reason why people from the prairies recognize your your absolutely outstanding.
Because they're crazy fans.
Yeah, they recognize your outstanding handsome looks in the out in Western Canada for a few more reasons than younger Montreal citizens would, for two reasons: 2009 and 2010, and those are two Grey Cups that if I would have played in or have been on that team, I can't even imagine. Like, I would have dreams that every single night. And even from the previous episode I had with Milt Stiegel, him and I talked about reliving those great moments in your career that are iconic staples of the CFL. His 100-yard game-winning catch against Edmonton and breaking the record for most touchdowns ever, those kinds of things. But for yourself, the 2009 Grey Cup to me is the second greatest Grey Cup that I've seen. As a Winnipeg fan, I have to always confess that Winnipeg winning is the top priority. But up until I was able to witness that this year, you guys, even just your grin, it says it all. What you guys did in 2009 was the most remarkable in terms of objectively. That is the most remarkable ending, and like in Grey Cup history, period, end of story. There's no two ways about it. What you guys did and watching the 13th Man documentary Engraved on a Nation from TSN. It says it all. So we're going to go a little bit into that game now. So you guys going into that game, we're 15-3, had lost in the Grey Cup the year before against Calgary in Montreal. Or it was in Montreal. Yes. Right. 2008. Was it Olympic Stadium?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys had lost the Grey Cup then, I guess, essentially at home against the Stampeders the year before, and had lost, I think that would have been, you guys would have lost 5 Grey Cups out of 6 appearances up to that point. And Saskatchewan were going in as the underdogs, but they had a whole province shifting over with them to watch that game. And you guys went down early, and there was tons of crazy things that happened in the beginning, but you guys had a really strong resolve. So take us through a little bit what happened in the second half and how you guys responded. What was Mark Trestman's speech to you guys at halftime, and how did you guys respond to what he said at such a crucial moment that you guys had been in before and hadn't found the success that you were looking for many times?
Well, you so eloquently and pointedly brought up our past and our history, which was not pleasant, right? Lost 5 out of 6 Grey Cups. It was ridiculous and pathetic, frankly. And so we had a history, and we were aware of that. And then we start the game poorly again. So the remarkable thing about that game is we had this reputation of choking and playing poorly in big games, and yet somehow we overcame that, turned it around in that game, and competed. And because we could have just cashed it in and said, "This is us, here we go again." But to the credit of the character of that team, and Mark Trestman deserves a ton of credit because he built this team to compete and to believe in one another and to not point the finger when things were going bad. And I really don't. I wish I remembered more of Mark Trestman's halftime speech. What I remember at halftime was a bunch of guys just in their locker shaking their heads, and then Anwar Stewart coming around and pretty much slapping everybody upside the head and saying, "We got this." They're going to get the ball back. They had the lead. Saskatchewan had the lead, and they were getting the kickoff back. And Anwar guaranteed that the defense was going to get a stop, and they were going to get the ball back to the offense, and we were going to take control of the game. And true to his character, he did just that. They got a stop. I don't know if it was 3 and out or 4 plays, but they stopped them. We got the ball back, and we were able to compete enough to get back in that game and never give up until after the clock struck 0. We were able to take the lead.
And even during the second half of that game, it was so back and forth in terms of the second half. The first half was all Saskatchewan. They forced a fumble right from the first drive. But when you guys got the ball back, when you guys were finally able to strike in the end zone.
Do you have a teleprompter? Are you reading notes somehow that I'm not aware of? How do you know that? How do you remember this stuff?
I'm not reading any notes. I promise you. Like, my phone is right here. I don't have anything behind me. But I just remember that game so much because that was like the first Grey Cup I watched all by myself in the basement. No one else was around me. And I was just like, come on, Montreal, like, you got to win. And as a Bomber fan, with what Saskatchewan had done 2 years earlier, there was no way that the Bombers could watch Saskatchewan win 2 Grey Cups in 2 years when the Bombers hadn't won one in how many years? And Saskatchewan only had 4 up or 3 up to that point, or the 07 was their third. And I remember in the second half when it was starting to, the key play that I think really helped you guys to look at yourselves and say, well, what are we made of? Was when Darian Durant scrambled up the middle on, I think it was 2nd and goal, or maybe it was like 2nd and 10 from like the 12 or 13. And he scrambled for a touchdown, and that made the score 27-11 with 10 minutes left in the fourth. But as they say in the CFL, no lead is safe. And you guys went down and drove with unbelievable tenacity and scored a touchdown just like that. And then what happened was, or I think the way you guys scored the touchdown was getting an interception. Durant and Dresser weren't on the same page. And I can't, the name of the DB is beyond me at this point, but he he caught, it was basically like the easiest interception ever. And then he took it back a few yards and you guys went and scored. And then when you got the ball back again, you were down by 8. And then AC called on your number. You guys stayed on the field on 3rd and short and threw the pass. And then as Chris Cuthbert would say, unloads, Ben Cahoon, touchdown. And you guys were faced again in the same situation in 2000, down 2, needing to tack on 2 points to tie the game, and then throws the ball the way of, I think it was Kerry Watkins or SJ Green.
Jamal Richardson.
Or Jamal, yeah. Throws Jamal's way and no marker. And then Chris Cuthbert again says, and shades of 2000. And I was sitting there wondering, what's he talking about? But then the final drive is the one that we all remember and the one that I think you love remembering the most. So take us through the final drive. What happened and what did you guys say in the huddle? Like, what were your thoughts on the sideline when Saskatchewan punted? And I think it was Brian Bratton who was supposed to be returning and he fumbled the ball. And I think you jumped on it, or maybe I could be wrong. I could be misremembering.
I wish. No, Etienne Boulay jumped on it and saved the game. Frankly, never would have had a chance had he not recovered that ball. And then Kerry Watkins had some big catches on that. Jamel had some big catches on that last drive. I think we go forward on 3rd down, and Jamel had a little option route that he made a 7 or 10 yard catch on to convert that, to get us into range. But it was just like I have said so many times, just complete team effort with Anthony making plays. Avon made plays all day long with his feet. He just positive yards every time he touched the ball. And then Kerry Watkins with a big old catch over the middle on a scramble. And Jamel did the same thing on an option route with it. Kind of was a little bit of a broken play, but Anthony kind of chucked it up to him and he made the catch. It was kind of a body catch. It wasn't like a high catch, but a little 7-yard option route that ended up giving us a chance. And then line up for the field goal. And I was the holder, so I'm just trying to do my job. And that's when the craziness happened.
And I remember in my humble opinion, the 2009 Grey Cup is the greatest game that Chris Cuthbert has ever called. So many iconic calls and moments. And I love watching, rewatching and listening back. And I think one of the most underrated ones. So you talk about Jamel's catch was when he says, cool to Richardson on 3rd and 10, like fires over the middle, bang, 15-yard catch and just silence. Just the stadium just falls to, you could hear a pin drop. It was so quiet. And that was one of the clutch plays of the game. And then obviously Kerry Watkins was the final throw that he made to get in range, right?
Yeah.
He was because he said, the all Canadian receiver who's been quiet all night has made one of the biggest catches of the game. That was what Chris Cuthbert was saying on the call. And then you guys, you're the holder on that play, and Damon Duval lining up to, he had the shanked punt earlier in the game. And then as soon as the ball snapped and it's down and the kick is up and wide, but every ref in unison tosses up a flag, and that a whole province has to hold their breath, because in football, that is one of the scariest moments on both sides of the field, or could be a moment of excitement. And for you guys watching back the documentary, you could still see Damon doing this. You can still see him doing that. Hey, like him just standing there and just doing that. That's all he's doing. Like, it ain't over. And then the second that Glenn Johnston does, too many men in the field, Saskatchewan, and all of a sudden, Glenn Suter, oh boy. And you hear all just the excitement of Saskatchewan just sucked into a vacuum, and it just drops to dead silence again. And then, as we all remember, Duval gets a second chance to win the 97th Grey Cup. Ball down, ball through, and the Montreal Alouettes have come all the way back and are the 2009 Grey Cup champions. And at that moment, when you put the ball down, the second it left his foot, did your head jolt up so fast it made your head spin? Or what were you like in that moment on the second try, knowing that you guys, God had given you guys a second chance to win this game? What was it like living in that moment as the holder? You had to put that ball down again.
Yeah, well, it was nerve-wracking. I was just trying to be present in the moment and focus on my job. And so I was a little slow to react. I think Scott Flory was like 20 yards downfield going to run after the ball, because he knew that it was going to be a keepsake of a souvenir. So he was thinking, 3 steps ahead of me. I was just trying to get the ball down and help Damon, do his job. But um, it was just a remarkable game for 100 reasons, and that's why it's the best Grey Cup game in the history of a phenomenal league. In Grey Cups that have twists and turns and crazy games, about every other year.
And that I couldn't even imagine what it'd be like on that play, and seeing the jubilation you guys experienced, and then once Mark Cohen finally handed you guys the trophy, and then the image of yourself lifting it up after he said, it was a great cup to Bob Wettenall and the people of Quebec and the Alouettes and everybody, congratulations. And so that moment right there it must have felt like a culmination for you, after, for your whole team and yourself as well, after all the years of having lost the Grey Cup and having come so close and double overtime and everything, and finally being able to, like you said before in a conversation we had, get the monkey off your back. It must have been just the most truly special feeling, and you must have just been on cloud nine for like 2 weeks on end. I couldn't imagine what that would have felt like.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's unlike any other feeling during the season because you can never really celebrate too much because there's always the next game to get ready for. So your body's beat up after every game, and it's time to you never can enjoy a real win because you're trying to figure out how to recover enough to be ready the next week and to start preparation for the next opponent. So but in a Grey Cup, you don't have any of that worry. Your body's going to have time to rest. You don't have another game to worry about. It's just time to celebrate with your family and enjoy, the accomplishment and the culmination of a long, hard-fought season.
And how crazy it was with everything that went into the game and coming back and finally winning. I think one of the hardest parts about being in that scenario after you've gone through, I guess, a drought, so to speak, is what happens next. The league doesn't end and stop existing and, happily ever after. You got to go do it again. And I think that was one of the even more remarkable things you guys did, was being able to overcome all the losses, overcome the deficit in that game with 10 minutes to go, down 16. That's 2 scores with 2 2-point conversions, and win. And next season, you got to go do it all over again. And you guys did. And you were the first team to repeat since the 96-97 Argos that had Doug Flutie. And to be quite frank, repeating in football, CFL or NFL, is extremely hard. And the fact that you guys did it after all the Grey Cup losses you had, I think is one of the most truly special comeback stories for any franchise at that. And so how did you guys handle the emotions and when the emotional highs started to decline? How did you guys handle the emotions and the expectations that were then set for the next year? Because now you were defending Grey Cup champs for the first time in 7 years.
Well, that's a good question. The monkey was off our back, so that helped. I think that gave us a little confidence moving forward. But also, we had a veteran group of guys that knew how to be professionals and knew how to get themselves ready for a season and a game every week. So we had the core, and the credit for that goes to Jim Pop and Mark Trestman. Trestman's approach was the glue, and we had guys that were experienced enough and professional enough to put the work in to make it happen. So many of those teams, they call it the Grey Cup hangover, and they celebrate well into the off season, and they're not working, and they're living in the past. So we had a group of guys that was mature enough to not do that and to know that it doesn't matter what happened a month ago or 6 months ago. All that matters is what happens right now, and to take that approach every single week.
And it's such a tough emotion to handle for some people, because having that veteran group really played to your team's advantage, considering if you look at all the teams that have won the Grey Cup or Super Bowl and don't even make the playoffs the next year, maybe it doesn't happen as often in the CFL because there's less teams and easier to make the playoffs, but it's hard to deal with at times. And for teams that are young or one hit wonders, it's difficult. But you guys were able to bounce back, stay consistent, get back to the Grey Cup, and then you were playing Saskatchewan, and here you were all over again in the same situation. And this time, and in the home of a familiar foe in Edmonton at Commonwealth Stadium. So, what was the mindset that you guys carried into that game, knowing that it was a repeat scenario of the craziest game that you guys had literally all played in your lives up to that point?
Well, we knew we had a great team, and that gave us confidence. We had been there and done that. As far as getting to the Grey Cup, playing in the big game, there's always a learning curve with a young team getting to the Grey Cup because so much is different with that Grey Cup week, with your schedule, the media attention, just even warm-ups and pre-game introductions and halftime. So much of that is different, and it is an adjustment. So we had a veteran group that had been there, done that. That helped. It's always hard to beat a team 2 times in a row. Obviously, we had played them, in regular season, but the only games that mattered was the year before, the previous year's Grey Cup and the 2010 Grey Cup. So they were extremely motivated to put that sour taste out of their mouth. And we're motivated too. It's a championship game, but there's that underlying next level that's kind of subconscious in the background of revenge that they had going for them. And it gives you a little more juice in practice and a little more focus in meetings when you have that revenge factor. And they had that going for themselves, but we just had a business-like approach, and we knew if we played Alouette football, we were a better team. And ultimately, I think that played out, even though it turned out to be a pretty dramatic game in and of itself.
And especially because the opening game, which some people argued was the best game of the decade in the 2010s, was on Canada Day 2010, where you guys played in the 54-51 shootout in Regina at the old Mosaic Stadium, and Jamel Richardson made one of the most unbelievable catches in CFL history, and in the back of the end zone on the 2-point conversion. And if you, and actually, truth be told, I didn't know this about this game until earlier this year. I was making a video about some of the craziest plays and, only in the CFL moments. And everyone in the beginning was, everyone remembers Jamel Richardson's catch on the 2-point conversion and in 2010 in July, on July 1st. But what I didn't know is the play before, it was 3rd and 10, or I think it was either the 3rd and 10 or on the 2-point conversion. I think it was 3rd and 10. Calvillo drops back to pass, throws over the middle and incomplete, but then a flag is thrown for too many men. And then all Saskatchewan groans again right after. Like the last game that he played, that was their ultimate downfall. And then again, they had to deal with it. And then he throws the touchdown, and then that tacks on 2 with, and quite honestly, looking at the replay, I think there was maybe 1 millimeter of green in between Jamel's elbow and the white paint on the back of the end zone. That has to be the tightest window I've ever seen a football thrown in and caught ever. Like, that is just crazy. If you watch the replay, like, you'll never be able to tell, but as history says, it stands. So they even had that game, and Glenn Suter in the call towards the end of the game said, payback for the Grey Cup. And I was sitting there thinking, listen, I was like, no, it's not. It's just a game. It's just a regular season game. This isn't the Grey Cup. And lo and behold, you guys went and won the real one that mattered. Like you just said, the Grey Cup, 2009, 2010, those are the only ones that matter, right? And, losing that game maybe it wasn't a good feeling, but again, it fuels into that motivation and the business-like approach you guys took. But even though that one was very dramatic, maybe it wasn't as dramatic as the one previous, because you guys had, I'm not sure if it was John Bowman or another defensive lineman, and made a great play and almost sacking Durant, and he tried to get rid of it. And then you guys picked it off on the sideline, and then were able to take a knee instead of have 5 heart attacks and go chase the football into the stands.
Yeah. What a treat that was, to actually have your heart rate somewhat normal to finish a game in the CFL.
That was super crazy. And so after that moment, then did you feel the great sense of relief knowing that you left it all out there? Because you mentioned, we were talking earlier about your body breaking down and knowing you were going to retire, and it's not exciting to look forward to your last season. But in almost Ray Lewis and Baltimore Ravens like fashion, after announcing you're going to retire before the season, it kind of maybe created some subconscious motivation for you guys to go out there and end on a bang, because that's what you did.
Yeah, just lucky for that. You know, I did not announce anything publicly. I kept it to myself and just a real small handful of guys, maybe Anwar Stewart and Anthony and Jim Pop, 2/3, 3/4 of the way into the season. So before that, it was just my wife and I who knew that that was the final deal. But yeah, just extremely fortunate to get to the Grey Cup twice in the last 2 years and to win it both times. And it allows for a retirement that I can, my mind doesn't go back to, you know, horrific bad games. I can smile and think about the great last two Grey Cup games we played in.
Speaking of smiling, thinking back on games, there's a very quirky game that I'm going to ask you about now that some hardcore CFL fans would remember, or anyone that is an avid watcher of TSN top 10s. But you guys were playing against Hamilton, or it was Toronto, in July or August of 2007. And here you guys were at the end of the game with your kicker ejected and then posed with a 22 or 25-yard field goal to win the game. And lo and
Damon
behold,
Duval again.
Who's
loose cannon?
Who steps up to save the day, and lo and behold, it's our beloved guest of today's episode. And you kicked a game-winning field goal after, you know, against all the odds of that scenario happening. So take us through what happened in that game and what led to Duval being ejected, and how you were the person that drew the shortest stick to go kick the game-winning field goal and have that pressure.
Yeah, Damon. Well, I think Toronto had a little bit of a game plan. I can't confirm this or verify this, but I think they had in their game plan that they were going to taunt and try to draw Damon Duval into taking a swing, because they had a guy, kind of a spy guy, that was just harassing Damon after every kickoff all game long, getting under his skin. And finally, I don't know what quarter it was in, but finally Damon threw a punch and got ejected. But it was a tight game, and I really didn't have too much time to process this, you know, that I was going to go kick any field goal of significance. But at some point, coaches came to me and asked me what my range was, and I really didn't know, because I hadn't determined what my range was. I was just the guy that screwed around at the end of practice and tried to take people's money by betting them, you know, that I could make a field goal. So not a lot of people knew this, but I grew up playing soccer like you, Tish, and as the holder, I was always hanging out with the kickers. So I loved kicking the ball, and would take my turn at practice, you know, just taking kicks, both left-footed and right-footed, and but had never, to this point, had never kicked a field goal in a game, in a live game, whether it's junior high, high school, college, ever. But got called upon, and luckily it was a little chip shot, and luckily it went through. But I was dealing with the backup holder too, so I had the chip stacked against me. Backup holder, thrown in the middle of a game, didn't really have time to warm up. And Marcus Brady, who held for me, said, hey, because at that time you could kick off a little tee or off the turf. And he's like, hey, are you going to kick off the platform, off the tee? And I was like, I don't know. So we took a few kicks into the net on the sidelines and decided to kick off the tee. But I think I got under it a little low because of the tee. But luckily it went through.
And watching that play, I never knew the significance of that play when watching it on Sports Center top 10 repeats. And because I was like, oh, good form, you know, there's nice end over end rotation. It's not too fast, not too slow. And and just your motion looked like, kickers in Madden in a video game. It's hard for them to make it look very realistic and fluid. And you took the old 1-2 and swing and you got it. There was no miss. And it was from relatively close, but hey, making a field goal is way harder than it looks for all those people out there that like making fun of kickers that miss or say, oh, well, he did this or he did that. At the end of the day, I'm sure that Damon Duvall would tell you this too, is you just got to make the ones that matter, right?
Yeah. But it turned out to be significant. It turned out we went into overtime. I think that kick was in regulation, but the game went into overtime, and then the Eastern All-Star Noel Prefontaine actually missed a field goal that would have won it for them. So that gave us the victory. So that was just a little irony that happened there at the end, that the replacement kicker ends up kicking a game-winning field goal.
And alas, to Toronto's plan, you guys foiled it with calling you in the clutch to come out and win the game from short range. But at the end of the day, that's just another great CFL moment that all fans will always love to look back on. And especially with NFL fans loving to look at the clips of Ocho Cinco kicking an extra point in a preseason game, and some of the linebackers who have to go out and kick surprisingly well. Wes Welker also kicking in a game. But it's always those moments that I find that are some of the most fun in football, because now it's a real unknown that is about to happen, where you see a guy line up who's been practicing kicking all week. It's like, okay, no worries. But now a linebacker, a big burly guy, or receiver like yourself is thrown into a game and has to be kicking the ball in 1.2 seconds before a ton of 250-pound guys come and blow your head off. And that, I mean, for someone like yourself, I don't think you were maybe as worried about getting hit because you're used to it when you're out there catching footballs. But for other kickers, it's not the most fun feeling in the world. So it's great that you're able to have that fun story for yourself and be able to always look and reflect upon that.
Yeah, that's one of my most fond memories, frankly, just because it was so bizarre. But I love it. And the strange, you're right. We had not practiced the whole operation of, the snap, the hold, the kick, and getting a kickoff in time to avoid a block. So that was my biggest fear, was, being a little too slow with it. But thankfully, protection held up, ball went through, and we won the game.
So now in your post playing days, you're now doing some work to stay connected with Canada with G2G protein bars. And yes, they are the best protein bars that I've ever had. And I can say that I'm, not a paid actor. I actually legitimately had it. And you're doing some work with them to stay connected to our great country here and a country that is near and dear to yourself. So talk a little bit about what got you into working with G2G and why it's been such a great thing for you to do, because you were coaching a little bit after you were done playing. And most people usually think, oh, good player, go coach and go get involved with football and stay around the game in terms of the game day. But that's not always necessarily the case for some people. And for yourself, you've taken a different path and it seems to have been working out really well. So talk a little bit about G2G.
Well, I appreciate it. I was coaching at my alma mater, BYU. Our offensive staff got let go. It's so common in coaching. It's not a matter of if, but when you get fired. And that happened to us, and it was not pleasant. But at the same time, I was trying to just consider, move my family all across the country or back up to Canada. I was looking into some coaching opportunities. And I was very familiar with this company, G2G Bar. And they were getting so busy. They needed a lot of help. And the timing was just perfect. The kicker for me was the owners told me that I could take over the Canada operations. And that for me was sealed the deal, because I knew it would give me a chance to travel up to Canada and stay in touch with relatives and friends up there and bring this awesome protein bar to the awesome people of Canada that I had really grown to love and had been so receptive and accepting of my family. So we launched the bar into Canada about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And we're growing. We're in a lot of retail, a lot of health and natural food stores up there. But it's just a growing venture, and we're looking to expand into other grocery stores and really have a great year in 2021. We do have a website, g2gbar.ca, where anybody can go and order these bars throughout Canada. And we're also on walmart.ca. But as far as the retail um, penetration, distribution, we're still growing. We're in probably about 400 or 500 retail locations up in Canada, and looking to expand that and double that next year.
So with how great this company's been growing over such a short amount of time, how did you, who specifically did you know, or how did you have a connection or know about G2G in Canada before coming up? Because it is very relatively new in our country.
Yeah, well, we weren't in Canada. We were in Costco in the United States, a few Costcos, and the Costco Canada people in Ottawa reached out to the owner and said, "Hey, we've seen your numbers. We want to bring you up into Canada." So that's what started the process of, getting the packaging in bilingual, and that was about the same time that I was hired on. And so there wasn't any footprint in Canada. So I was the one that kind of got the business number and started the legal entity of importing into Canada, and got some distributors up there, and just we built it from scratch, and still growing and building. But that's the exciting part about my job, is we get to grow something that sells itself. Like you said, the protein bar is incredible, and I say that I'm a salesman, so people know I'm biased, even though I've had 3 already today. But it's just real food, clean. Most of the ingredients are organic. We freshly grind the almonds or the peanuts ourselves. There's no preservatives or junk, and it tastes like a homemade protein ball. We keep it in the fridge so it maintains its freshness, but it tastes so superior. I've tried them all. I go back to the muscle milk or the tiger's milk bars that we used to have in the 90s, and so many protein bars are just crap. But this is real food, and you taste the difference. So as soon as we provide an opportunity for people to try them, then the rest takes care of itself, because they do sell themselves.
And I think that's such a great part of being involved with a company like this, is where you give the opportunity for people to taste it and they go, wow, like this actually is great. And you know that with protein and health and fitness being something that will always exist as a trend, and I think that it's just going to keep continuing to grow. You always want to make sure that eating healthy is just important as working out and exercising and staying fit, and especially when it comes to protein bars, because I guess before COVID, people's lives were always operating at a million miles an hour, and everything is go, 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 go. And especially if you have a family and you have kids or anything like that, you're always just flying across the house, doing all sorts of things, taking care of everybody. And when it comes to eating breakfast or eating nutritiously, you're always in a rush, or you're always like, oh, I'm just gonna grab a protein, eat a Cliff Bar, and that'll be breakfast, or I'll just eat this with a little bit of that, and boom, that's breakfast or lunch or whatever it is. And so that will always still exist as a part of our world as we start to get back to normal. But being able to have something that is very healthy to eat while you're doing so many things at 100 miles an hour, it only makes things a little easier on yourself, if anything, because we can never anticipate the endless number of things that we're going to have to take care of or be involved in as we get jobs or as we get older and have more people dependent on us and more things that we have to take care of and responsibilities. But any way that you can make someone's life easier with eating and nutrition is, I think, such a fantastic thing.
Yeah. Well, if you have an active lifestyle, then you need protein in order to recover and maintain and build muscle. So a lot of the bars, especially the shelf stable bars, are more energy bars or granola bars, but we provide a high protein option with fresh natural ingredients that your blood sugar is not going to spike. You're not gonna tank 2 hours after this. It's going to keep you full for a long time, and it's going to provide the high quality protein that you need to maintain your muscle mass. And it's not just for meathead guys that go to the gym and bodybuilders. It's for everyday people. Most of our customers are women, that just are looking for something that's healthy, that tastes good, that's convenient. Like you said, life gets in the way from us eating a healthy breakfast. So I have one of these every single day for breakfast, and it gives me 18 grams of protein, keeps me full until lunch, and it tastes amazing. So, and it's really for everybody. My kids love them. Give them to my soccer daughter, when she's going away to tournaments, and gives me peace of mind that I know she's not gonna starve, and she's actually gonna be eating something that's gonna fuel her body.
Especially for someone like yourself, being growing up a busy family man and a professional athlete. I can't imagine, how much you would have thought, where was this when I was playing football? Like this must have been something I missed out on, having lots of things going for yourself. But it's great to be involved now. And I think that it's something that is super awesome that you're involved in, and can only continue to grow up from here.
Thanks, man. Um, the exciting part for me is we sell to so many professional football, basketball, NHL teams and organizations. We don't donate these bars to them, but their dietitians and their nutritionists purchase them from us and provide them for their athletes. In Canada, the Eskimos have bought them for their team, and most of those guys are real familiar with G2G bars. But also about 5 other NFL teams and 4 or 5 NBA teams, as well as a couple of NHL organizations buy them for their team. So that's fun for me to stay involved with the athletes and the strength and conditioning and dietitians that work with pro teams.
So for G2G, have you ever thought about running a CFL Ben Cahoon sponsored campaign to promote the bars, with similar to how Flutie Flakes and Fantu's Flakes existed for Riders and Doug Flutie when he was in the CFL, of, eat G2G, these are Ben Cahoon bars or something like that. You ever had some of those, funny
Not
campaign
really.
promos?
Not really. I think early on, I remember we were trying to make a little sales sheet for a Canadian function that we were doing, and I think we messed around with having a picture of me catching a football and photoshopping the football out and putting a G2G bar in there. But I don't know what the response was with that, and we haven't done anything like that recently. But um, we're just grinding it out up in Canada. We're doing expos and trade shows. Hopefully, more of those will happen this year, and we're meeting and greeting people and passing out a ton of bars at marathons and races to ultra marathoners, and sponsoring athletes that love these things because it helps their performance. So we're building brand awareness, and we're doing it one bar at a time. We're doing it the right way, and we're excited for the future of G2G Bar up in Canada.
Well, everyone who's listening out there, make sure you go check out G2G at g2g.ca. Great bars. They're super fantastic, and you'll love them too when you have them. They're absolutely awesome. So make sure to go check those out. So Ben, we're starting to wrap up the end of our time here today. I'm super, super glad that you're able to be on today's episode. But before we finish, we're going to ask, one more question of you here, and then that'll be it. So we've talked about a whole whack of things: playing in great cups, winning, losing, different coaches, funny stories. So the final question I have for you today is, what was the scariest moments that you experienced during a game in which you ended up feeling a sigh of relief after what you thought was going to happen didn't happen?
Oh man, that's a tough one. We every game you're scared you're going to lose, but that's the worst thing that's going to happen. That's not the end of the world, especially if you're able to go home to a family that loves you regardless of whether you won or lost that day. But I was always more. You're talking about fear. I was always nervous before every game. I was scared more than anything that I was going to play bad. That so, and I really that really motivated me and drove me to work hard, because I knew if I was prepared that I wasn't going to have that fear. So I, tried to do extra work and try to prepare with film, but mostly catch a ton of balls and go into a game with confidence that I was going to be able to catch the ball well and make plays for my team. So I don't know. I mean, we talked a lot about Grey Cup losses. There was a lot of fear in those games that they weren't going to turn out, and they did not turn out. But at the end of the day, you wake up the next day and the sun shines and you have other opportunities. And thankfully, you live to play another day and have a chance to put those losses behind you. But in sports, for me, the fear of just failure was a driving force. But I can't remember. I was never scared to be hit. Maybe should have been a little bit more at times, but wasn't scared. I think my wife was scared, especially late in my career when she knew, our games and days were numbered. She was scared that I was going to get hurt. She just wanted me to walk away from the game, healthy. But that's kind of a rambling answer to your question, but I can't answer the question precisely as you ask it. I can't think of a way that I was scared and then things didn't work out that way. Do you have something in mind? Is that a leading question?
Well, I mean, what I was gonna say, I guess turned out to have a Hall of Fame career. So, being scared every game, and it turned out to be okay in the end with, finishing with a back-to-back and a Hall of Fame induction in 2014. So, I mean, I think that things ended up working out okay, and you didn't walk away with any serious, life-altering injuries. But one thing did just come to mind, talking about, being scared of being hit. Who was the toughest guy that you played with? Absolute toughest, like just, oh my goodness, you look
opponent. Well, I think so many times, the TSN would have the greatest hits of the year highlights at the end of the year, and especially the second half of my career, it seemed like I was in about 3 of the top 10 hits of the year every year. I was kind of the sitting duck, and most of those hits were from like Wes Lysek, or there were safeties, that were big hitters. Rob Hitchcock was a fierce competitor. Wes Lysek, I still have a little. Every time I kind of crack my neck, I think of Wes Lysek because of a hit he gave me back in 2010. Not malicious, but he would have been ejected from the game if we had the rules that we have now. But I don't know. Some of those safeties were big hitters. Most of the corners were, they didn't want to get too physical. They were pretty boys on the corners, but the safeties were bringing the heat. And Gerald Bond, a guy, I don't know if you remember, he was a beast. He had a club for an arm that he would come and try to just uppercut you across the side of the head. A few times he got me on that. But
in terms of guys that you played with on the same team, would you say that then John? I think you said John Bowman, probably one of the toughest guys that you played with on your own team.
Well, without a doubt, he is. You've got to be in order to play that many years in the league, and you got to stay healthy, have some luck, and you got to take care of your body, and you got to work and fight through injuries and pain. But Scott Flory, same type of career, and that's what gives you that bond, that you're playing with these guys that they're trying to fight through stuff every single week. So everybody's going through injuries and playing through pain. But pound for pound, toughest guy, I don't know, Avon Coburn might be up there. Mike Pringle was a beast. I think he blew his ACL and played the next week. I mean, he was a straight beast. So I'd like to final answer, Mike Pringle.
That's, if this was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you would be correct. Mike Pringle is an absolute legend, CFL Hall of Famer, held that record until Milt broke it for most touchdowns in CFL history. So that's a special record to hold. And, Mike held it for quite a while. So it's crazy they would have played with someone so amazing. And Ben, I want to thank you so much for being on today's episode. It was super fun. I love reminiscing about, my favorite Grey Cup games and talking football, and especially with the 2009 Grey Cup. Anytime I get a chance to talk about that game, I'm always very excited. Or the 2019 Grey Cup. Two Grey Cups that had similarities. Both happened in Calgary. Both the years ended in 9. And the outcome was just absolutely outstanding. So thanks so much for being on today's episode. It was amazing. I had an amazing time.
My pleasure, man. It's great to talk to you. Fun. People don't know, but we just talked ball for 20 minutes before the podcast even started. So it's great talking football and CFL with you. And I appreciate you reaching out and wish you the best of luck.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode with Ben Cahoon, who is a CFL Hall of Famer of the Montreal Alouettes, 2-time Grey Cup champion, and now works for G2G Protein Bars. So go check them out.